So what do you get when you throw a small kangaroo from Australia into the wild setting of the USA in the crazy 90s? Well, you get one of the most underrated cartoon shows ever, Rocko's Modern Life.
Rocko's Modern Life.
Rocko's Modern Life.
Rocko is an Australian wallaby that is just trying to make it through everyday life in the bizarre place that he lives, O-Town, with his loyal dog Spunky, his bestie with an appetite, Heffer Wolf, and his neurotic turtle buddy Filbert. Rocko goes through a lot of crazy adventures. From aliens to piano missiles and even a short trip to hell, Rocko goes through it all in his modern life. So, let's dive into a recap of some of the best episodes. No pain, no gain. Rocko's at home, working up a sweat with an exercise routine led by a quirky creature on the TV. Just as he's really getting into it, the doorbell rings. It's Heffer, but Heffer's too large to fit through the door, and with a dramatic crash, he breaks through, falling flat on the ground.
Come on in, Hef.
Got any multi-fish bits?
Rocko rushes to help him up, asking if he's okay. Heffer is completely unfazed, excited to tell Rocko about the 2 passes that he scored for the new health spa. Rocko's eyes light up as he dreams of winning a race thanks to the spa. Cut to the health spa, where Chuck and Leon introduce their exercise point system. They pick out some clothes and get to working out. They hit the aerobics class, where Rocko pushes through the hard lesson, but Heffer just kinda sneaks out, saying he'd die if he did the whole thing.
They're trying to kill me.
Meanwhile, Rocko gets bullied by the instructor, who even uses him as a damn basketball. After that, they head to the gym, where they split up to work out. Rocko goes to the electric chair master. This goes about as well as you'd think. He gets fried. Meanwhile, Heffer's having a burrito while working out. You know, I'm not sure he really gets the whole workout thing. Anyway, Rocko goes to the rowing machine and accidentally picks the hardest setting, getting absolutely cooked again. He goes to Heffer, who's still having something to eat while he's working out. The Chameleon brothers warn them that they're not doing so well on the tests, and they move away from there. Heffer checks his weight, only to see that he's actually gained more pounds.
Oh no! I've gained 200 pounds!
He complains about not losing weight while biting down on a sandwich, but Rocko snatches it from him and says that they should go play basketball. At the court, Heffer flies through the air and dunks, breaking the backboard and the wall. Man, Shaq would be proud. After that, they go for a swim. Rocko jumps in, asks Heffer to join him, but when Heffer jumps in, all the water and everybody else in the pool gets chucked out. They go to the anatomizer next, and Rocko tries it out, even though the Chameleon brothers warn him how dangerous it is. He starts out well, but then cranks up the difficulty and gets absolutely wiped out, launched into the mirror, and turns into goop. Oof. Eventually, they relax in the sauna, but Heffer accidentally makes Rocko spill his drink. In an attempt to help, Heffer rips off Bev's dress, leaving Mrs. Bighead scrambling to cover up with a piano. The Chameleon brothers, unimpressed, decide to kick Heffer out, but allow Rocko to stay. But Rocko, loyal as ever, stands by his friend, declaring that if Heffer isn't welcome, he isn't welcome either. The 2-0 heads back to Rocko's house, where they end up exercising while munching on some pizza. Might not be healthy, but it sure is wholesome. Who gives a buck? The episode opens with Heffer and Rocko watching TV. Heffer, tired of watching the all-Scottish show on Rocko's TV, asks if they can watch something else. But Rocko explains that he can't afford any of their cable channels, he's completely broke. And we get to see just how broke he is. His lava lamp explodes, which makes his sofa break. Then Heffer sits on his beanbag, and that explodes. The wallpaper is going off the walls, and there are cracks everywhere. I mean, his home is a mess. Heffer says he needs to get new stuff, but he can't afford it. And then his TV breaks down too. Just then, he gets mail, and sees that one of them is a Congloma credit card. Rocko is skeptical about using it, but Heffer convinces him that he can pay it off later, so he agrees. This definitely won't have any negative repercussions. So Rocko, armed with a Congloma credit card, heads to the O-Town Mall with Heffer. They search for a parking spot, following a guy around the lot, only to discover that he's a little boy who got lost looking for his mom years ago. Eee, that is disturbing.
I've been lost for years. I can't find mommy.
Anyway, they eventually find parking in outer space. From there, they get inside the mall, and Rocko goes on a buying spree, getting a new clean couch, an unbroken TV, and a fire hydrant dog bowl for Spunky. Once everything is moved into the house, Rocko realizes he went overboard and bought almost everything in the store. He then receives a call from Congloma demanding payment.
Hello?
Yeah, nobody saw that coming. Congloma begins threatening Rocko, and Heffer bails. Super mad, Rocko chops up the credit card. At night, Rocko has nightmares about the credit card pieces coming to life and tossing him into a fire. The next day, unable to afford his purchases, Conglommo repossesses Rocko's new furniture as their truck slogan reads, "Don't charge a dime if you can't pay on time." Heffer then comes back with a fire hydrant identical to the one that Rocko bought for Spunky. He explains he couldn't stand the idea of Rocko losing his new stuff. Rocko asks how Heffer paid for it, and Heffer reveals that he traded one of his 3 stomachs through the All-Scottish Show's organ exchange program, which is very disturbing. But that's what real friends do. Sell vital organs to get each other gifts. The next episode is Power Trip. Rocko's at work, engrossed in a really big man comic book. In the comic, RRBM effortlessly saves Megapolis, tossing a skyscraper back to the city, a giant squid back into the water, and an atomic missile into the sun. But he accidentally throws Jimmy the koala instead of the missile, and looks around like he doesn't know what he's done.
How easy that was, Jimmy? Jimmy.
The scene shifts to RRBM disguised as Lois Lame, a receptionist at the Daily Orbit newspaper. But RRBM destroys the office door and falls through the floor due to his massive size, so his boss fires him.
Lois, you're fired!
Back in reality, Rocko's at the comic book store, kind of a lot of comics. His boss, Mr. Smitty, leaves for a hair implant and puts Rocko in charge, warning him not to touch the green button in his office. Rocko places a help wanted sign in the window and begins interviewing candidates, all of whom have the weirdest looks and stories imaginable. These candidates include his friend Filbert, who's a huge comic book nerd, and he ends up getting the job. Rocko checks Mr. Smitty's luxurious office, and after messing around for a little bit, finds a green button on the chair. Despite his boss explicitly telling him to not press the button, he presses it. The chair proceeds to give him a great massage, but it ends up triggering a transformation into a mean version of himself. Rocko starts acting like Mr. Smitty, barking orders at Filbert. Filbert is overwhelmed by the demanding customers, and Rocko calls him into his office, and he eventually gets tied up, and the store's vandalized. Rocko sees this through the office camera and demands Filbert come to the office. He scolds him and fires him, which leads to poor Filbert ending up on the road. He calls out for RRBM, and what do you know? RRBM arrives to save the day, showing Rocko the impact of his actions have. Through his magic chest hairs? Oh my god, that's weird as hell. But as weird as RRBM's nipples sucking Rocko's eyes are, it does work. Rocko realizes his mistake and returns to his old self, and he apologizes. RRBM helps Rocko and Filbert set up an event at the store, drawing a huge crowd and boosting sales. Mr. Smitty returns, unmoved by the profits, and orders Rocko to fire Filbert.
Fire him!
What? You heard me.
Fire him!
Rocko refuses, leading to both of them being fired. In the end, Rocko and Filbert are seen in the unemployment line, while RRBM, disguised as Lois Lame, takes over the comic book store and ends up tearing Mr. Smitty's hand off. For a kid's show, there's a lot of violence in this. Next up, to Heck and Back. The episode begins with Karen, the chicken, getting hired at Choky Chicken. Moments later, a vacuum-packed chicken is sent to the restaurant. Rocko and Heffer are there, and Heffer orders a ridiculous amount of food, spending $37.58 on a single fast food meal. He has some problems. Anyway, Rocko tries to talk to Heffer about his eating habits, but Heffer chokes on a chicken rib cage. Rocko asks if there's a doctor in the house, and there are a bunch, but they all ignore them.
He's joking! He's joking! Is there a doctor in the house?
Rocko attempts the Heimlich maneuver, but Heffer's spirit floats up to heaven. He reaches for a giant sandwich in the sky, but his wings melt, and an anvil appears on his back, sending him plummeting into Heck, which definitely isn't a kid's show stand-in for hell. Peaches, the leader of Heck and the stand-in for the devil, greets Heffer and tells him his name, to which Heffer questions how serious he can take somebody named Peaches.
They call me Peaches.
Peaches?
From there, Peaches takes Heffer away and accuses him of gluttony, beginning his torture in Heck. Meanwhile, Rocko tries to retrieve the ribcage from Heffer's throat. The doctors are still ignoring him, and he ends up falling inside Heffer. In Heck, Peaches shows Heffer a TV program of his gluttonous past, upsetting others, like swallowing Grandpa Wolf's birthday cake whole.
My cake! My cake!
Seeing Rocko inside his stomach on TV, Heffer feels guilty. Peaches sends him towards a light where Rocko walks through. Peaches reveals his udder-shaped head, laughing menacingly. Rocko switches on the light of Heffer's heart, bringing him back to life. Heffer's spirit is reeled in by a fishing line baited with a drumstick, which he tosses aside, having learned his lesson. Peaches looks kinda shocked at first, but it turns out he could care less. Maybe the devil isn't so bad after all. Anyway, Heffer spits out Rocko, who retrieves the ribcage. As they leave for the movies, Heffer asks to stop at the beef barge for more food. Peaches, disguised as Rocko, asks him if he's learned nothing.
Have you learned nothing?
Heifer wakes up, realizing it was all a dream. But Peaches appears again, and Heifer wakes up a second time with his head in a pretzel box. Heifer and Rocko head to a comic book sale, but not before Heifer asks to stop at Choky Chicken. Karen tells Heifer about her job interview, and Heifer says he wants to stop at the Choky Chicken. Even going to hell and back couldn't stop this guy's appetite. Meanwhile, Peaches plays with a patty ball in heck, and misses the number 666 by 1, so he starts over again.
664, 665.
Cabin fever. Ed and Bev Bighead go on vacation to a mountain cabin, only to find Rocko and Heifer have rented the exact same one. Ed insists he booked it for the July 4th weekend, but Rocko points out that it's January.
But Mr. Bighead, it's January.
That is one crackhead scheduling mistake right there. Despite Ed's annoyance, Rocko is kind enough to agree to share the cabin with them, even though it's Rocko's booking. But that isn't good enough for Ed. And while the others play outside, Ed plans to drive Rocko and Heifer away. Later, everyone else is out playing making snowmen, while Ed attempts to hurl a giant snowball at them from the mountain top. But it misses and rolls back onto him, and gives Rocko and Heifer a head for their snowman. In a snowball fight, Ed accidentally hits a bear, who gets mad and knocks out all of his teeth. Woof. That night, Rocko, Heifer, and Bev play shadow puppets. Ed joins, but they can't guess his shapes, so he packs his bags and is ready to leave, shouting, "How can I rest when I have to spend my weekend with those two pinheads?"
How can I rest? How can I rest when I have to spend my weekend with those two pinheads?
Unfortunately for them, his echo triggers an avalanche, trapping them all inside the cabin. Well, now they are really stuck together. The next day, Ed tries to call for help, but the phone is dead. They watch the news, which reports their Snowden cabin, and also says that they'll probably starve to death. Ooh. While everyone else plays poker, Ed tries to contact the outside world, but his attempts to call for help via a radio transmitter fail when he's mistaken for a fast food customer. Frustrated, he overloads the transmitter, causing it to explode in his face. Done with all the shenanigans, Ed tries digging through the snow himself. That night, while the others tell scary stories, they open the door to find a frozen Ed. Mistaking him for the abominable snow monkey from Heifer's story, they attack him. Later, Ed starts hallucinating, seeing the others as devils.
Are you okay, Mr. Bighead?
When he regains consciousness, he goes mad and invents a cannon, using it to launch himself out of the cabin. Eventually, Rocko, Heifer, and Bev are rescued, but Ed ends up on a deserted island with two stranded pelican sailors. That's what you get for being an asshole to people who are nice to you, man. Alright, next episode, Rinse and Spit. Filbert is chasing Heifer around the neighborhood with pliers in hand. Heifer dashes into Rocko's house and hides behind the sofa. Filbert shows up and asks Rocko if he would be his patient for his final dental exam. Rocko tries to dodge it by saying his teeth are perfect, but Filbert guilt trips him by reminding him of the time he saved him from bullies as a kid, so Rocko reluctantly agrees. Strong-arming your friends into doing you favors is a dick move. At the Academy of Dentistry, Filbert inspects Rocko's teeth and finds a cavity. He gives Rocko some water to rinse and spits it out. Then Filbert x-rays Rocko's teeth and attaches electrodes to it, giving it a good shock. But things go sideways when the tooth with the cavity gets angry and uses the x-ray machine to turn itself into a giant tooth monster.
Will the patient please get his tooth under control?
The tooth monster breaks free and heads to O-Town, dragging Rocko and the whole building along with it. Very King Kong of him. Filbert tries to bail on the exam, but Dr. Hutchison, his teacher, reminds him he has to deal with the tooth monster now. So Filbert, dressed as a tooth fairy, scales Conglomo's top building. On the roof, he faces the tooth monster. When the tooth monster grabs Dr. Hutchison, her hook falls off, and Rocko tells Filbert to aim the hook for the cavity. Despite being a terrible thrower, Filbert actually nails it. The tooth monster drops Rocko and Dr. Hutchison and falls to the ground below, shrinking back to normal. Rocko picks up the tooth, pops it back in his mouth, and all seems well. Filbert gets a medal for his efforts, but his diploma is cancelled because he sucks at being a dentist. Dr. Hutchison asks him out on a date, but he says he'll call her later. Feeling down, Filbert sits on the curb. Rocko consoles him, and Filbert admits he never wanted to be a dentist. He wanted to be a chimney sweep.
With my brush till I can't spank it no more. And I'd sing, sing, sing.
Rocko quickly cuts him off and suggests they go get a soda, but no more singing. After the episode, a talking foot named Gordon gives a quick lesson on good oral hygiene before riding away in a taxi. The showrunners genuinely cared about the kids watching. That's cool. Cruisin is one of the few double-parters in Rocko's modern life. Whereas most episodes tell two 10-minute-long stories, Cruisin spends the whole episode focused on one narrative. The episode opens as Rocko and Heifer drive Heer, Heifer's grandpa, to a senior citizen singles cruise and help him on board. They look for his room, but Heer and Heifer both need a bathroom break. Suddenly, Rocko hears the ship's horn blowing and realizes it's about to leave.
Cast off!
He tries to stop it by grabbing the rope, but he fails. Rocko and Heffer end up stuck on the cruise with Heer. Heffer suggests they blend in and says no one's gonna notice them. So the next scene is them locked in a chamber and Rocko's yelling at Heffer for his stupid idea. Just then, the captain walks in and makes them scrub the deck. Later, they flip a coin to see who decides the rest of the chores and who takes care of Heer. And Rocko loses the toss, so he has to take care of Gramps. Meanwhile, Heffer has to brush every denture on board, which is disgusting. While caring for Heer, Rocko gets run over by other seniors in wheelchairs as the ship tilts. Rocko plays checkers with Heer, but Heer hates it and calls for the girls with a hot tub instead. Unfortunately, they go after Rocko instead, which really upsets him. Meanwhile, Heffer serves food and accidentally knocks over a row of seniors' walkers, causing them to chase him around the ship. At the last dance ballroom, Rocko hates the old people music and he leaves. When he gets back, he sees Heer staring at his old crush, Winifred Wolf, who once slapped him for what I can only describe as inappropriate flirting. After he's done remembering the whole thing, he sees Winifred is gone. Bummer. Later, at the Flamingo Room, Heffer serves as the waiter, and the seniors start a food fight. Meanwhile, Heer finds Winifred at the edge of the dock. She tells him he hasn't changed in the past 50 years, but still isn't interested. Rocko asks Heer about it, only to get whacked with a cane. Annoyed, Rocko says, "Hope I never get old and crutchy."
Hope I never get old and crushy.
But his senior hears what he said and explains the struggles that old people face, which makes Rocko super emotional. That's when Rocko sees ducks in the ocean and runs to the captain, begging him to steer away. But the captain refuses. He wants to run the ducks over. That is one sick guy right there. Having no other choice, Rocko takes control and accidentally navigates the ship into the Bermuda Triangle. Ooh boy. Moving on to part 2. The episode sees the ship go through the Bermuda Triangle. Fighter planes turn into monsters, lightning strikes burning galleons, and Heffer boards a space shuttle, only to scream at aliens who look like him. A clock speeds up time, turning Rocko and Heffer old and making the elderly passengers young again, including the captain, who gets turned into a diaper-wearing baby. Now old and decrepit, Rocko and Heffer finally understand the struggles of old age. Meanwhile, young again, Heer tries to get with a younger Winifred,
Young or old, Mr. Wolf, you think only of yourself.
who rejects him again. Just then, a storm hits, rocking the boat violently. Rocko gets launched out of his wheelchair and falls into the ocean. Too old to swim, he's saved by Heer. He hooks him to a rope for Heffer to hoist up, but Heer gets hit by a tidal wave and falls back into the ocean where a shark approaches. It looks like they're gonna be shark feed, but Winifred saves Heer by whacking the shark with a board and pulls him to safety. Back on the ship, Heffer is crying about his dead grandpa, but Rocko shows him that he's safe and sound. The Bermuda Triangle alien takes a picture of all 4 of them, and the ship reverses time, turning everyone back to their old selves. As the captain heads to the deck, everybody gets off. Rocko thanks Heer for saving his life, and they part as friends. The episode ends with the alien showing the photo of Rocko, Heffer, Heer, and Winifred all together. Old and young people can get along. All you need is a cruise. Junkies. Rocko gets a call from Pizza Face Pizza, and they tell him he owes them money. He checks his fridge and freaks out when he realizes he owes $500.95 by today, or he'll have to deliver pizzas as punishment. Jeez, I wonder whose fault that bill is. While he's wondering how to pay the bill, a pile of junk falls on him. Heffer and Spunky. Heffer, who hit his head on a bowling ball, asks Rocko when he's gonna get rid of all that junk. That's when Rocko gets the idea to have a garage sale. So Rocko and Heffer set up all the junk on the front lawn. Heffer shows Rocko some stuff to sell, including a creepy G.I. Jimbo model soldier. Heffer also wants to sell Rocko's pogo stick, but Rocko refuses because it's a family heirloom. They wait for customers and see a skywriting plane that says "Surrender Rocko," meaning Pizza Face Pizza really wants their money. Heffer realizes he forgot to put up a garage sale sign. Once he does, a ton of customers show up. There's a bunch of stuff up for sale, including plutonium, and he sells it for $5.
How much for the plutonium? $5?
You know what? I'm not even gonna react to that. Anyway, during the sale, Ed Bighead argues with Rocko over the price of a toilet seat, while Heffer secretly helps people load Rocko's furniture into a moving van. The argument is cut short when they see the Pizza Face Pizza van drive by, causing Ed to run back to his house. Heffer tells Rocko he made $10, and they now have $300. A customer offers Rocko $25 for the pogo stick, which Rocko refuses. But then the customer offers $200, and Rocko gives in. After the sale, Rocko puts the leftover junk in the garage and finds Mr. Onion Head, his old toy onion from childhood. It reminds him of all the good times he had with the pogo stick, and he starts to tear up. He regrets selling it. When Heffer returns, Rocko tells him they need to get it back. Heffer notices the toy onion and bites off its head. Come on, man. Turns out, the guy who bought the pogo stick rips Rocko off for $500 to get it back. So Rocko's still short on cash. He decides to just accept his fate and become a pizza delivery boy. Just then, the Pizza Face van shows up, and the delivery guy lectures Rocko about not paying his bill. During their talk, another customer offers Rocko $500 for a G.I. Jimbo soldier model, which the pizza delivery guy snatches from him. He tells his assistant Wallace to get in the truck, and it turns out Ed is the next pizza delivery guy.
Move it, bubble butt!
Looks like someone else wasn't paying their bills either. Rocko and Heffer go back inside the house, only to discover Heffer sold all of Rocko's furniture. God damn it, Heffer.
Heffer?
What?
Where is the furniture?
Want to order pizza?
Please don't tell me that you sold the furniture, Heffer.
Day of the Fleco. Rocko is at kind of a lot of comics, gearing up for a big camping weekend, trying to clock out, but Mr. Smitty tells him to add another whisker to Bunnyman in every comic they have of him. By the time Rocko finishes, hours have passed, and he's exhausted. He drags himself home and collapses into bed, only to be woken up by a knock on his door. It's Heffer, asking if Rocko's ready for the camping trip. Rocko apologizes for forgetting, and Heffer, seeing how tired Rocko is, tells him to go back to bed, which he does. Poor guy is spent. Rocko gets back into bed, but is woken up by the big head's car alarms, set off by a bird's feather. Ed runs outside and smashes the car with a baseball bat, finally stopping the alarm. Rocko goes back to sleep, but then a bird starts chirping loudly at his window. Annoyed, Rocko yells at the bird to shut up and tries to sleep again. This time, the sun wakes him up, so he boards the window shut. Poor Rocko. Meanwhile, Fleco the fly wakes up and flies into Rocko's house, heading straight for the garbage can. Spunky chases him off, and Fleco ends up in Rocko's room. Fleco lands on Rocko's head. Spunky leaps into the bed, and Rocko gets startled, jumping through the ceiling. Rocko sends Spunky out and tries to sleep again. Fleco lands on Rocko's nose, but gets flicked away, slamming into the ceiling, and his eye falls into Rocko's nostril. Fleco tries to retrieve his eye by plugging Rocko's mouth shut and reaching inside his nose, but it doesn't work. He then tries using a vacuum cleaner, but fails again. Desperate, Fleco swings on a spiderweb into Rocko's nose. At this point, if a nuke went off, I think Rocko would sleep through that too. Inside, Fleco wades through the dry mucus and grabs his eye, but Rocko sneezes him out and then tries to crush him with a hammer. Fleco pretends to beg for mercy, claiming he's a single father with a million kids. Rocko, feeling sorry, lets him go, but Fleco pokes Rocko in the eye and calls him a jerk. Enraged, Rocko chases Fleco with the jackhammer, but he gets away. Fleco makes it home, ready to rest, but there's a knock on the door. It's his friend, who looks a lot like Heffer, asking if he wants to go camping. Fleco just slams the door in his face. Season 3. The Emperor's New Joe. Rocko's working at kind of a lot of comics when he decides to check out the Chameleon Brothers' new coffee shop, Cafe Chameleon. Heffer offers him a cup of coffee, but as soon as Rocko takes a sip, he's disgusted by what they're calling coffee. The Chameleon Brothers then take him to the back and start telling this long-winded story about their time in Balzac, a country far away from O-Town. Balzac. They came from a place named Balzac.
Balzac.
So the story goes like this. The people of Balzac were playing volleyball and kept accidentally tossing the ball into the Emperor's yard, which was already full of other balls. They were all scared of this fashion-obsessed king, who the Chameleon Brothers, Chuck and Leon, worked for as servants. They give the king a square-styled haircut, and he announces to the citizens over an intercom, "This is the new style." The Chameleon Brothers try to keep the king happy every day by coming up with new styles and trends every single day. But then, he reads about coffee in a magazine and demands that everybody start drinking it. The Chameleon Brothers remind him there's no coffee in Balzac, and he throws them in the dungeon until they can get some. Talk about a moody guy. In the dungeon, they meet another prisoner, washing socks with his brown sludge. When they realize he's drinking the sludge as a coffee substitute, they get an idea. After getting out of the dungeon, they offer the king a taste of their homemade coffee, which was made from dirty socks. The king pretends to love it, so the Chameleon Brothers start making this coffee for him and the whole town. They narrowly beat life sentences, escape on a ship, and make it to America with socks on their feet. So, using the socks and some donations from Heffer, they kicked off their coffee business. That is gross. When Rocko hears all this, he refuses to give the coffee another chance and makes a long speech about why it's a bad idea, and how they're in America, the land of the free, and even quotes Thomas Jefferson. Annoyed, the Chameleon Brothers throw him out mid-quote and tell him to come back tomorrow to try the cheesecake.
Come back tomorrow and have the cheesecake.
Through the back door, a customer complains that he's not eating cheesecake, and the Chameleon Brothers start telling another story about the cheesecake. Looks like all their food and drinks are scams.
Hey! This isn't cheesecake! Let me tell you a little story, friend. It starts in Antarctica.
Schnitheads. Heffer's walking through the city and stumbles upon a restaurant called Schnitzel Hut. He rushes inside and orders a huge meal. The cashiers asks if his life feels empty, and Heffer, being Heffer, agrees. The manager then pops out of the gas register, offers him a sausage, and invites him to a bratwurst party that's free. But nothing in life is ever really free. After dinner at Rocko's, Heffer's about to leave when Rocko spots a sausage in Heffer's back pocket. Heffer says it has the address for the bratwurst party he's going to. Rocko refuses to join, saying he has to wash dishes, but Heffer tries to convince him that there's more to life than responsibilities, that he's losing touch with the meaning of life. But Rocko doesn't budge, so Heffer heads off alone. I wish there was more to life than responsibilities, Heffer my boy, I really do. At the party, Heffer's blown away by all the different sausages. He's an absolute feast.
Sausage Wellington? Filet of bratwurst under glass?
Just as he's about to leave, the manager hypnotizes him into coming back the next morning to spread the word about sausage. This might be a cult. The next morning, they head out to promote sausages and try to give some to Ed, but he just slams the door. Can't fool Ed with consumerism.
Have a nice day.
Meanwhile, Rocko wonders if Heffer found the meaning of life. The Schnitzel Hut manager takes Heffer to the Channel 98 building where they spread the sausage gospel. Heffer even does a sausage puppet show on TV. Rocko sees this and is absolutely shook.
What the blazes? Heffer on TV? Playing with sausage?
Meanwhile, the manager tells Heffer to come with him. They head to a sausage factory where sausages are being made in all sorts of styles. Rocko gets a call from Heffer's mom, who saw Heffer on TV and asks him to bring Heffer back since he hasn't come home. Heffer, now working at the factory, grows tired of sausages and orders a pizza for lunch, which horrifies everybody else. As punishment, Heffer is sentenced to plow the sauerkraut field. Yeah, this is definitely a cult. Rocko drives the sausage factory to rescue Heffer, but gets turned away by one of the cult members. Frustrated, Rocko meets up with Filbert at the Schnitzel Hut and blames himself for letting Heffer get caught up in the mess. Filbert then invents a sausage mobile, and they head back to the factory, pretending to be the malevolent bratwurst, demanding the cult members open the gates. They manage to get Heffer back, but due to Heffer's weight, the sausage mobile's jaw breaks and the cult members catch on to their act. They tie up Rocko, Heffer, and Filbert to sausage statues. Uh-oh. Just when the cult members are about to chuck bowling balls at the group, the King of Wieners shows up, and the cult members start worshipping him.
I am the most supreme and mighty King of Wiener.
He packs them into his suit and drops them on a deserted island. The king then rescues Rocko, Heffer, and Filbert and brings them back to Rocko's house. The King of Wieners is actually really big man in a Mardi Gras costume. He explains that he saw all this happening through, his nipples of the future.
When I saw in my nipples of the future the trouble you were going to have.
He flies away, and Heffer says he learned all that shiny is not sausage or something.
I sure did. All that's shiny is not sausage.
Never change, Heffer. Never change. Sugar Frosted Frights. The episode kicks off with the narrator telling us the story of the Hopping Hessian, a ghostly mercenary who lost his leg during the war. Every Halloween, he rises from the grave to search for it. Just as things start getting spooky, a reporter cuts in, wishing everyone a happy Halloween and warning them about the Hessian's return. The reporter then asks the same question I did. What the hell is a Hessian? At Rocko's house, he's showing off his inflatable, really big man costume to Heffer, who reveals his own costume, a glow-in-the-dark pumpkin tattoo on his belly. They rush over to Filbert's house, finding it in total chaos. Filbert, hiding under a sheet, explains that he's afraid to go trick-or-treating because of a story his crazy Aunt Gretchen told him about candy being poisoned, and the Hopping Hessian coming after him. But Rocko and Heffer really don't care how scared he is, and drag him along. That's some A-grade peer pressure right there. Their first stop doesn't go well, when the lady at the door mistakes Rocko for the real, really big man, who's already trick-or-treating as Rocko. Nice. At Gladys Hippo's house, they score a ton of candy. Filbert is scared at first, but he tries a piece, and it literally blows his mind. He goes crazy and rushes to another house demanding candy. When the lady gives him a bowl full of pennies, he loses his breaks into the house, and starts raw dogging a bag of sugar. Yep, he's totally lost it. High on this sugar, Filbert bolts into the dark woods, crossing the old photo hut bridge with Rocko and Heffer chasing after him. Heffer says they shouldn't cross the bridge. That's where the Hopping Hessian lost his leg. But Rocko says they need to go after Filbert. They find him in a cemetery gnawing on a grave mark, thinking that it's chocolate. After he passes out, Rocko and Heffer wake him up, and Filbert promises to never eat candy again. Heffer says they're deep in the dark woods and cross the old photo house bridge, but Rocko stops him from scaring Filbert. Unfazed, Filbert keeps walking. They get stopped by a rabbit who tells them to look behind them. They turn to see a shadowy figure with a missing leg and a sword. It's the Hopping Hessian.
Hey, look behind you.
The ghost charges after them, and they run with Filbert lagging behind. Just as they reach the bridge, the Hessian blocks their way, ready to strike. The last thing we see is Filbert's broken glasses falling into the river. The narrator reappears, saying the story isn't over. 1 year later, on Halloween night, Filbert is completely fine. He heads to Rocko's house, where he finds Rocko and Heffer looking at photos from the previous Halloween, accompanied by the Hopping Hessian. It turns out the Hessian never meant to harm them, he just wanted to scare them as a Halloween prank. Go figure. Heffer asks the Hessian's missing leg Gordon if they really fought in the Revolution. The Hessian confirms it, but Gordon admits he's just a friend of a friend who likes to help out. Realizing it's late, Gordon and the Hessian head back to the dark woods, and Rocko and his friends go trick-or-treating. Just as they're about to leave, a trembling Filbert asks who took the photos. Everybody freezes in horror, even the Hessian.
Who took those pictures?
I guess some Halloween mysteries are never solved. Ed is Dead, a thriller. The episode opens with Heffer narrating a spooky play called Ed is Dead, revealing the big heads arguing on their front lawn. Bev scolds Ed for being lazy, and he uses a wart on his butt as an excuse? Weird. Lazy old man. Meanwhile, Rocko tosses a ball into the big head's yard while playing with Spunky, who doesn't go after the ball at all. When Rocko reaches under the fence to get it, Bev picks him up, and she and Ed argue again. Rocko grabs the ball and watches as an angry Bev cuts the bushes. Man, she's really mad at her husband. That night, Rocko hears a commotion outside. He looks through his window and sees Bev's silhouette raising a weapon over Ed's head. He hears scraping sounds and sees Ed dropped to the floor, with Bev saying, "What a mess. I'll get to it tomorrow." Terrified, Rocko hides under his sheets.
What are you doing? Put that down!
He just witnessed a murder. The next day, Rocko thinks it was all a nightmare. Spunky startles him, causing Rocko to get his head stuck in the ceiling. He looks out at the big head's house, noticing how quiet it is. Rocko decides to check on his neighbors to see if everything's alright, and sees Bev digging a hole shaped like Ed's body. She then throws a mysterious object into it, saying it didn't turn out like she wanted. Ugh. So Rocko sneaks into the big head's house, finds a bunch of tools under a blanket instead of Ed. He hears Bev come back home, so he hides in the basement, where he's attacked by their dog Earl. Rocko runs into Bev, who's cutting up a bug, and invites him to dinner, saying Ed won't be joining them. Horrified, Rocko runs away. During a stormy night, Rocko is 100% sure that Bev murdered Ed. Spunky runs through the big head's fence, and Rocko follows. The lightning reveals the bushes, spelling "Kill Ed," making Rocko scream in horror. He confronts Bev, who explains everything away. Clothes in the suitcase were for the dry cleaners. The power tools are therapeutic, and the hedge message was his imagination. She claims the hole was from an Ed-shaped shovel, and the attack was her making a meatloaf sculpture for Ed's art class. When Rocko asks where Ed is, Bev gives him a killer look and moves towards him. Suddenly, the sun comes out, and a taxi pulls up. Ed hops out, revealing he went to get his wart removed. Rocko tells him it's great to have him back, and everything returns to normal. That night, Rocko tells Spunky they can't believe everything they see, and the episode ends with silhouettes of Ed and Bev kissing through their window. Looks like they're a happy couple after all. Fish and chumps. Heffer and Filburt are on Rocko's front lawn at 5 in the morning. Filbert shows off his new glow-in-the-dark watch, and Heffer, eager for their fishing trip, casts his fishing rod towards Rocko's bedroom window. He ends up hooking Rocko's underwear, his bedroom drawer, and literally everything else in the room before snagging Rocko's bed, which crashes through the window and wakes Rocko up in the worst surprise imaginable. Heffer cheerfully reminds him about their fishing trip. "Rocko's a better man than me. I wouldn't take anyone fishing if they did that to me." At the two-patch Crappy Jack's dock, the sea captain, Crappy Jack, tells them he'll take them fishing even though they look like city boys. The captain has wooden legs, arms, and eyes, and those wooden eyes prove costly when he leads the trio to the boats but sails off in the wrong one, leaving Rocko, Heffer, and Filbert on a life strike boat all by themselves. In the middle of the ocean, Rocko demonstrates fishing by hooking a worm, which comes to life and writhes all over the place in pain. Feeling bad, Rocko replaces the worm with cheese, but a giant squid appears out of nowhere and asks them for it. After giving the cheese to the squid, Rocko tries using a wiener as bait, but it mysteriously reappears behind him a couple of times, only to disappear back into the water. I know, we basically just saw a sea monster, but that is somehow even more terrifying. As they continue to fish, Heffer starts impersonating the captain, and ends up finding a lunchbox with sandwiches in it. The trio starts eating the sandwiches, but when Rocko asks who made them, they realize the sandwiches were bait for them. Rocko and Filbert drop their sandwiches, but Heffer already finished his. With the hook stuck in his mouth, he's dragged to the edge of the boat and is about to get pulled in, but Filbert uses a violin, which he took from a random violinist, to smack Heffer, making him spit out the sandwich. Deciding to head home, Rocko puts on a life vest and tries to pull up the anchor. Heffer and Filbert watch in horror as Rocko gets hooked by a fishing line attached to his vest. Rocko manages to free himself just in time, and they see a fish and a shrimp named Frank and Edgar fishing from their boat underwater.
Hey, Edgar, I almost got one.
I'll tell you, there ain't nothing like a relaxing day of fishing.
The trio tosses everything suspicious overboard, but Heffer accidentally throws the boat's engine into the water, leaving them stranded. Filbert then tells Heffer to ask him what time it is. Annoyed, Heffer slaps Filbert's wrist, causing Filbert's watch to fall into the ocean. Great job, Heffer. Great job. Rocko tries to use the radio transmitter to call for help, not realizing it's connected to Frank and Edgar, who tell them to abandon their boat. Realizing that they're being duped, Rocko turns the radio off. Later, Filbert notices his watch resurfacing and goes after it, but it has a fishing line attached to it. So Filbert is dragged away, and Rocko and Heffer hold on to him, sending the boat spinning around the ocean. As the boat comes to a stop, they spot Captain Crappy Jack sailing by. They call for help, but he sails away, absolutely clueless about what's going on. Does this guy have wooden ears too?
Turns it goes and shoves me marlin spike right up his nose. Davy reels back and heads for the rail.
Meanwhile, the three of them lose balance and nearly fall into the ocean, until the giant squid comes back, saving them before asking for more cheese. Give that squid every ounce of cheese that he wants. Back at Rocko's house, the three are relieved to be on dry land. Meanwhile, underwater, Frick and Edgar cast their fishing line and hook Rocko's house, dragging it through the streets as Filbert asks Heffer what time it is. Camera shy. The episode opens with Heffer videotaping Rocko in front of his house. Rocko, Heffer, and Filbert rented a video camera to make home movies for Rocko to send to his parents in Australia, showing them his life in O-Town. One problem, he's holding the camera upside down. Heffer realizes this and turns the camera 90 degrees, which is still incorrect. Rocko, trying to stay patient, asks if Heffer is focused. Heffer zooms into Rocko's right eye, making sound effects, and finishing with one of his signature woo takes. After some more silly antics, Heffer finally gets the camera right and asks Rocko to make a goofy face. Just as Rocko's about to, Heffer focuses on Spunky instead. Spunky bites Heffer's foot, and Heffer sends Spunky flying at Rocko's face. Is Heffer the worst cameraman ever? Later, inside Rocko's house, they watch the footage. Spunky's fascinating seeing himself on TV. Heffer thinks that they've shot some great stuff, but Rocko disagrees. His parents want to see his actual life, but Heffer says it has to be interesting. Picks up the camera and starts filming Rocko, turning into a narrator. Fast forward to Rocko's workplace, kind of a lot of comics, Heffer starts recording, and after some silliness, Rocko introduces his job and his boss. But Mr. Smitty pulls down the shade, leaving Rocko looking kinda stupid. Next, they film Spunky doing tricks. Despite their begging, Spunky just stands still or sniffs the camera. Rocko promises an amazing trick, but just as Spunky's about to do it, the camera's battery runs out. Rocko and Heffer don't notice this and cheer on Spunky's performance. Rocky asks Heffer if he got a good shot, which he confidently replies yes, unaware that the camera wasn't recording. That evening, Heffer and Filbert have the camera set up on a tripod to film Bev Bighead cooking. Rocko doubts his parents would be interested, but Heffer assures him Europeans love this stuff. Bev, wearing a chef's hat, starts a cooking show, only for Ed to angrily interrupt. Heffer, not intimidated, tells Ed to act with more pathos, which makes Ed kick them out.
Now try it again with more pathos.
Later, Rocko, too tired to continue, goes to bed. Heffer and Filbert plan to film Rocko at night, which is just all sorts of messed up. They head outside his house, waiting for Rocko's nightly trip to the kitchen for a glass of milk. Rocko's butt naked except for a sensor bar comes downstairs. Heffer whistles at the naked side of Rocko, which Rocko hears, and they think he's seen them. They run away in a panic, leaving the camera running. With friends like that, who needs enemies? Am I right? The next day, they return the camera to the video store, run by the Chameleon brothers, Chuck and Leon. Heffer and Filbert convince Rocko to use the store's editing service, and the Chameleon brothers take the job, promising a fabulous result. The finished video, titled La Vie Moderne de Pinto, includes a montage of their footage with abstract text and clip art. Unfortunately, the rogue footage of him naked is front and center. The Chameleon brothers show the video in their cafe to a small audience, including Bev Bighead. Rocko, arriving to pick up the video, is horrified to see himself naked on screen. The Chameleon brothers tell them they've produced 11,000 copies of the thing, and Rocko panics and runs out screaming. I would have sued the hell out of them. Anyway, with Heffer and Filbert's help, Rocko rounds up all the copies, stacking them inside and outside his house. They count 10,989 tapes, leaving just 11 more to find. Filbert returns with the last 10, but Heffer reveals he sent one to the Australian Film Festival, which makes Rocko lose his mind. He runs outside and becomes one with his mailbox. The mail carrier arrives, stuffs mail down Rocko's throat, and he leaves. The mail has a letter from Rocko's parents, who are proud of their son's unexpected film festival win and ask him for autographed censor bars. Relieved, Rocko is surprised to learn they won the film festival despite the embarrassing footage. Rocko decides to erase the remaining tapes, but the first one they're about to erase is a different video titled Toads in Love, featuring Ed and Bev Bighead romantically breaking plates with their tongues. Rocko and his friends are stunned. That is some seriously kinky stuff right there. Moving on to Season 4. Ed good, Rocko bad. Spunky watches a movie trailer for Stray Dogs on TV and gets excited seeing other dogs running around outside, so he sneaks out through the dog door, enjoying some stray dogs and digging up the big-head salmon bush. Ed sees this happening and calls the dog pound. While he's doing that, the other dogs are bullying Spunky. They even snatch his tag off, making him look like a stray too. Just then, the dog catcher shows up, making all the dogs scatter. Unfortunately, Spunky can't escape, and he gets caught. Aw, man. Later, Rocko starts looking for Spunky and finds his collar on the big head's lawn. He figures out that Spunky must be at the dog pound and goes there to get him. But the dog catcher mistakes Rocko for a dog and tosses him in a cell with the other dogs, even though Rocko keeps telling him that he's a wallaby. Rocko finally finds Spunky and is shocked by the terrible conditions and treatment of the dogs. He decides to write a complaint to the city about the dog pound. Rocko and Spunky manage to escape through a sewer pipe that leads back to Rocko's house, where they find Heffer, who's been hanging out there the whole time. Rocko tells Heffer about his plan to write a letter, only to find out that the dog catcher just retired. Luckily, there's an election for a new dog catcher coming up in O-Town, and Rocko decides to run. Rocko asks the big heads for their vote, but Ed, worried that Rocko will cause chaos by freeing the dogs, decides to run against him. Bev tells Ed he's literally the most disliked person in O-Town, so Ed Ed gets the Chameleon Brothers to help him change his image. They also start spreading rumors about Rocko, making him look like a troublemaker. Count on those two to ruin literally everything. During the election, everyone believes the rumors and votes for Ed. When Rocko watches the results on TV with Heffer and Filbert, they see that Ed has won, with Rocko only getting 2 votes, his own and Filbert's. Heffer shamefully admits he voted for Ed, which is just crazy. Even though he lost, Rocko's more worried about the dogs than the election, but he's relieved when Filbert tells him that the voters approved a bill for better dog treatment, including counseling, obedience training, and a fun amusement park called Canine Kingdom. In the end, Rocko's ideas won over the community. Plus, Ed, now the dog catcher, has been demoted to a pooper scooper. I mean, cleaning up is a job that suits a shithead.
I hate my life.
Teed off. One day, at Conglamo, VP Mr. No Way is chilling in a hot tub with other executives, each in their own tub. He calls over a waiter who then uses a crazy conveyor belt system to drop Ed Big Head right into No Way's hot tub. Ed thinks that he might be in trouble, but No Way just wants to chat and asks what he does at the company. Ed explains that he checks bottle caps, and No Way offers him a promotion, asking if he plays golf. Turns out the company president, Mr. Dupet, needs a golf buddy for the weekend, and Ed eagerly agrees. That weekend, Heffer's working as a groundskeeper at the Conglamo Country Club. He's goofing off when his boss, who looks like Darth Vader, catches him and gets him back to work. He goes back to his lair where all of his henchmen, who look like stormtroopers, are ready to rig the game in Mr. Dupet's favor. Meanwhile, Mr. Dupet and Ed are ready for the golf game, which is being televised for some reason. The game is rigged with piano missiles to ensure Dupet wins. Every time Ed hits a golf ball, it gets blown to smithereens with a piano.
Oh, would you look at that?
But things get spicy when one of Ed's shots makes it to Heffer, and he gets leveled by a piano. Heffer decides to help Ed by dropping golf balls into the holes without being seen, and things suddenly become interesting. As the game progresses, Ed keeps getting blown up by piano missiles, but still manages to score thanks to Heffer. The commentators and everybody else are shocked as Ed starts catching up. At this point, Ed has been hit with so many pianos, he doesn't even know who he is anymore. Eventually, Heffer's secret help is discovered, and it leads to a final showdown. Heffer uses a flying lawnmower, dodges missiles, and gets the ball into the hole, winning Ed the match. However, his mower's hit, and he crashes into Golf Darth Vader's base, but somehow still alive. Dupet congratulates Ed, but doesn't give him the promotion. Mr. No Way, thinking Ed betrayed him, freaks out and starts assaulting him with golf clubs. The episode ends with aliens landing on the country club. Pissed off at Heffer's crop circles, they think they're offensive messages, and that is somehow not the weirdest thing that happened in this episode. Fly burgers. So Rocko gets some fancy AAA Australian beef from his mom and hides it in his secret fridge, knowing that it's gonna get snatched otherwise. Meanwhile, Fleco the Fly is tired of his crappy life, living off rotten burgers and Rocko's trash. He sees a commercial for a sleazy attorney, Wally H. Barker, who will represent anybody, for anything. Fleco smells burgers and sees Rocko grilling. He lands on one and Rocko flicks him off. Fleco then fakes an injury, remembering the commercial, and he threatens to sue Rocko. Rocko doesn't take Fleco seriously, thinking he's just having a rough day. But the next morning, Barker shows up at Rocko's door with a court summons. At the trial, Fleco arrives in a wheelchair and the jury is all flies and bugs. The judge, Sockner, sentences Rocko to 30 days as a fly and transforms him into one.
Now get that fly out of my courtroom.
Later, Rocko's friends throw a party at his place, and he struggles to survive without being swatted. Meanwhile, Fleco is living it up at a fancy restaurant when Judge Sockner and Gordon see him and notice that he's not injured. They drag Fleco to Rocko's house to make him apologize. At Rocko's house, everybody's partying, and Rocko realizes Heffer has raided his secret fridge for the beef. As soon as Rocko tries to join in, they all start swatting him away. Judge Sockner and Gordon show up just in time, and Rocko tells everybody except Heffer and Filbert to get out.
I'm Rocko!
Rocko?
Out! Everybody out of my house!
And Judge Sockner makes Fleco apologize for his lawsuit. Rocko then admits he understands how tough it is being a fly, and he tries to befriend him, but Fleco just flies away, rejecting his friendship. Judge Sockner then turns Rocko back to normal, and Heffer and Filbert apologize for being total tools. In the end, Rocko, Heffer, Filbert, Sockner, Gordon, and even Barker share a group hug. But when Rocko goes upstairs to his room, he flies up the stairs. He still has fly wings. I mean, guess I wouldn't really mind that. Pretty useful. Hypno Puppy love. Heffer's chilling at his house, flipping through a Bunny Man comic book when he spots an ad for a hypnotism kit. He thinks it's a great idea, because why wouldn't he? And orders it immediately. The next day, the hypnotism kit arrives, and Heffer rushes to Rocko's house to show it off. He uses it to hypnotize Rocko, which takes a while. Once Rocko's under the spell, Heffer has him act like a rooster, then a statue, then a dog. But when Heffer tries to turn Rocko back to normal, he realizes he needs the second lesson of the hypnotism kit to undo it. He didn't buy that lesson. Great job, Heffer. Rocko, now fully dog mode, runs off before Heffer and Filbert can react, leaving them looking like a bunch of idiots. And they are idiots, who they all turn turns their best friend into a dog. As Rocko continues his doggy adventure, he chases a street sweeper, loses his shirt, and chews in the process. Filbert and Heffer make a sketch of Rocko and post pictures all over town to help look for him. Meanwhile, Mrs. Bighead finds him in her salmon bushes, mistakes him for a dog, and tapes him home, shaving him and naming him Fluffy. Meanwhile, Heffer and Filbert find Rocko's flattened shirt and assume he's been run over, and he's gone. They mourn their squashed friend at a diner, only to see Bev driving by with Rocko in the car. They chase after her, but they can't catch up. The next day, the second lesson of the hypnotism kit arrives. They try to hypnotize Rocko on the Bighead's lawn, but Bev takes him inside before they can. That night, they sneak into the Bighead's house and take Rocko back.
Got him! Get out of here!
The next morning, Bev is depressed, thinking that Fluffy ran away. She cries in her room so much there's a literal lake of it, until Ed comes to her in a boat and gives her a goldfish named Fluffy to cheer her up. Say what you will about him, the man does love his wife. Back at Rocko's house, Heffer finally reverses the hypnosis. Rocko is shocked to find himself naked and hairless. He uses Heffer's toupee to cover up just as Ed and Bev arrive to show off Bev's new pet goldfish. But he bursts out laughing at Rocko's bald look, and Heffer reveals he ordered a pair of X-ray glasses with the second lesson of the hypnotism kit. As Heffer laughs like a madman, everybody else runs away, not taking any chances. This guy is an actual psychopath. Driving Mrs. Wolf. The episode opens with Rocko literally hanging on for dear life as Hef's mom, Virginia, is a terrifying driver. She's speeding towards another seemingly insane driver in a car rally. Just as it looks like they're about to crash into each other and get blown to smithereens, the scene freezes. Future Rocko shows up, rewinds, and starts explaining how they ended up in this mess. It all starts with George showing off the brand new car he bought to Virginia, even though he says he's not going to drive it. After all, it might get scratched. George seems like the kind of guy who wouldn't take the plastic sheets off his car seats for 2 years. Anyway, over dinner, the Wolf family really gets on George's nerves, and they ask him when they can take it for a spin. But George doubles down and refuses to let anybody drive it, especially Virginia, since she, doesn't know how to drive. She says she could learn, but George says he'll be damned if she learns to drive in his new car. And just to make sure nobody drives it, he locks the key in his newly built security system to keep it safe. The next day, Rocko shows up at the Wolf house, and Virginia ropes him into taking her to the store. When she admits that she's a lousy driver, Rocko says he can give her a lesson, and she jumps at the chance. He starts the lesson off simple, teaching her to drive around light poles. It looks simple enough, but Virginia crashes into every single pole. And then she does the same thing when she reverses the car. Realizing what he's going to have to deal with, Rocko gets them both helmets. Next up, Virginia tries merging into traffic. This goes as well as you'd think. She scares the living hell out of Rocko and ends up crashing into a fire hydrant, flooding the car. I guess Rocko should have parked scuba gear as well. Up next is parallel parking. And Virginia manages to make Rocko's car jump on 2 other cars, then on a roof, and then she manages to get it in the parking lot. Upside down. Sign reading is next, and she seems to be doing well, until she hits a fire hydrant and floods the car again. But the real kicker is when she stops the car directly on the tracks. Rocko starts screaming at her to move the car. She says she won't because she doesn't like Rocko's tone, and they get pummeled by a train. How in God's name are they even alive? By the time they get back, Rocko's car has been destroyed. The bumper falls off, the tires give out, it catches fire, and if that wasn't enough, it gets hit by a damn meteor. Rocko says he's gonna start walking home, but Virginia says she'll drive him home in the new car. Getting past the security system is pretty easy. She just pulls the plug out and steals the key car. She makes her way to the highway as recklessly as you can imagine, and then she misses the exit to Rocko's home. She says she'll take the next exit, but unfortunately, the next exit leads to the O-Town Demolition Derby. The rest of the Wolf family is in attendance, and George is showing some guy's new car when he sees it right in the middle of the Demolition Derby and is horrified. In the Derby, Rocko and Virginia miraculously avoid the other cars, even though they're all targeting their new car, and they all crash into each other instead. George is so gone at this point that he's in a straitjacket. He can't stand to watch it. After they've avoided everybody else, they have to avoid the Thrasher, the craziest demolition driver, who heads straight for them, and it looks like they're about to get totaled. Rocko screams in horror, but the Thrasher misses them and hits a fire hydrant, flooding his own truck. Virginia wins the Demolition Derby, and Rocko finally gets home, looking like he's aged 10 years. George is thrilled that his car survived, and is impressed with Virginia's unexpected victory. After they get home, the kids think it's finally time for them to get to drive around the car. But this time, both George and Virginia say no. The joke's on them, because after they shut the garage, the car completely breaks down. That's what you get for being stingy, I guess. Put to pasture. So, Heffer's chilling on the couch, munching on a ton of pasture puffies, when a special news bulletin comes on. The reporter says eating too many of these snacks can cause you to pass out, or worse, and that eating 100 bags in one day could be fatal. Heffer realizes that he's eaten way too many and he passes out. Oop, that's not good. Next thing you know, Heffer's rushed to the hospital in an ambulance. Rocko and Filbert are there, super worried about their friend who's now in a coma. Filbert remembers the first time he met Heffer at Foodorama. Flashback to Foodorama, Filbert's working there, and the manager warns him about this dude that eats way too much. Heffer. Filbert is serving samples when Heffer, who's wearing a paper bag as a disguise, devours the whole tray. Filbert gets annoyed, thinking that it's Heffer, and tries to hide the samples. Eventually, Heffer's identity is revealed, and Filbert freaks out as Heffer almost crushes him. Back to the present, Heffer is lying in a hospital bed, still unconscious. Rocko, Spunky, Filbert, and the Big Heads are watching through the window. Ed and Bev recall the time Heffer sent Ed to the hospital. Flashback to the Big Head story. Heffer was a paper boy, and Ed, who was once O-Town's most handsome guy, watches him from the bushes. Heffer throws a paper at Ed, who tries to catch it with a baseball glove. Bev tells Ed she fixed the blender, but Ed tips and his head ends up in the blender, blending his face. So that's why he looks the way that he does. That's pretty tragic. After that, Rocko remembers meeting Heffer in high school. Flashback to high school, Heffer is introduced to the class, and the teacher says he needs a partner. Rocko volunteers, much to Filbert's dismay. They have a project to make a potato lamp, but Heffer eats the potato, screwing up their chances of getting a good grade. As they stay late eating chips, Rocko offers his chips to Heffer, who then eyes Filbert's chips. Filbert refuses to share, so Heffer attacks him for the chips. Filbert then puts a light bulb in his mouth, and it lights up. Rocko and Filbert then get an idea, and stuff Heffer with potatoes. The next day in class, the light bulb shines so bright in Heffer's mouth, it lights up the whole world. Back to the present, Rocko, Filbert, and the Big Head stand by Heffer's bed, mourning his coma. Suddenly, Heffer wakes up. At first, everybody's happy, but then they remember all the crap Heffer's caused them, and they walk away mad.
And then what happened?
Got an A+.
Oh, yeah. You're okay.
Heffer pulls out a bag of pasture puffies, but Rocko comes back and snatches it away. Heffer laughs to himself and waves goodbye as Rocko leaves. Future schlock. In the future, Norbert and Gilbert are poking around Rocko's abandoned house when they stumble on an old photo of themselves as babies, with Rocko, Spunky, Heffer, and Filbert. Gilbert's tracking device starts beeping, leading them to the refrigerizer, when they find a super old banana. They take it to their dad, Filbert, who looks pretty old, despite being only 38. After some random questions, Filbert vanishes, but then Shelbert shows up. They show her the banana, and Filbert returns to tell the kids about the past. 17 years ago, they all took a picture with Rocko, Spunky, and Heffer. Snapped by Filbert. Ed, under Bev's orders, takes another photo with Rocko, Spunky, Heffer, Filbert, and all the kids. Afterward, Heffer spots a monkey in a cage by the Big Head's garage. The explanation is simple. Ed is planning to send the monkey to space. Pretty standard stuff, you know? That night, Rocko, Spunky, and Heffer sneak into the Big Head's yard to rescue the monkey. When they open the garage, Heffer gives the monkey a banana, making it go wild and crash into Ed's car, breaking the cage. The monkey takes off in Ed's car, and Rocko, Spunky, and Heffer chase after it. Filbert finds a banana on the sidewalk, walks into Rocko's house, and puts it in the fridge. Then looks for his friends, but can't find them. Meanwhile, Rocko, Spunky, and Heffer chase the monkey through the Conglommo building and end up in a rocket ship that takes off immediately. Ed shows up at Rocko's house to confront Filbert about the monkey, and they both watch as the rocket ship flies to outer space. Back in the future, Filbert finishes his story, saying he never saw his friends again. Suddenly, he spawns the same rocket ship flying towards them. Rocko, Spunky, and Heffer, along with the monkey and a bunch of bananas, exit the ship. The monkey grabs the old banana from Filbert and heads back to the ship. Before leaving, they tell an old Ed Big Head that he would have gotten away with it if he had just taken the sticker off the banana. The monkey and Ed teleport away. Rocko, Spunky, Heffer, and Filbert head inside Rocko's house. Rocko's thrilled to be back, and Filbert is now fit and young again. Norbert and Gilbert take off in the rocket ship before Filbert can remind them they don't know how to drive. The ship flies away, crashes through Rocko's house, and takes it with them. Rocko asks Filbert what he's been up to since that day, and Filbert is just like, "Are you serious?" And Heffer wraps it up by singing 900 bazillion bottles of root beer on the wall. Wow. That's where the original show ended, but in 2019, Netflix released a Rocko's Modern Life movie. Ties up the series, gives us a better ending, where the main crew isn't left floating in the endless void of space. Static cling. After Rocko's house got launched into space, Rocko, Heffer, Filbert, and Spunky have been floating around for about 20 years. What have they been doing for the last 2 decades? Well, Heffer is still singing his root beer song, and he finally finishes it. And as a friend group, they've been doing nothing but watching old episodes of the Fatheads while scraping candy stuck under the couch to eat as snacks. But after so long, even their Fatheads DVD bites the dust. I don't know your opinions on the afterlife, but that sounds a lot like hell to me. One day, as they're passing by Earth, Filbert realizes the remote control for the rocket has been stuck to Heffer's butt all along. They hit the re-entry button and land back in O-Town, only to find the place has changed dramatically in the last 20 years. Oh, and on the way down, they passed by Conglommo and caused a bowling ball to drop on Ed Big Head's calculator. That's gonna be important. Anyway, Heffer and Filbert quickly adapt to all the new customs and technology, but Rocko is completely overwhelmed by all the changes. This part makes some pretty astute social commentary. Shows how people are obsessed with the newest phone every year, all sorts of unhealthy food and drinks, even how superheroes in movies are portrayed as dark and gritty instead of being people we look up to. Terrified by this new world, Rocko freaks out and decides to hide out in his own house, which is a very understandable reaction if you ask me. Bev Big Head comes by to welcome Rocko back. When he asks why he can't find the Fatheads on TV, she explains that the show has been off the air for years. This, of course, leaves Rocko horrified. His last connection with the 90s is officially gone. Meanwhile, the clerical error caused by Rocko's re-entry leads Conglommo and all of O-Town into bankruptcy. Ed is fired. and his house is set to be demolished the next day. Oof. But Rocko comes up with an idea. He and Ed go to Conglamo and convince Mr. Dupet to bring back the Fatheads, promising it'll make enough money to save the company. Dupet agrees and rehires Ed, but orders the Chameleon Brothers to direct a CGI animated special. Rocko is convinced this new CGI direction will ruin the Fatheads, so he decides to find the original creator Ralph Bighead, who left on a journey of self-discovery years ago. It's a good decision. After all the Chameleon Brothers ever do is just ruin stuff. So using a couch attached to a drone, Rocko, Heffer, and Filbert travel the world searching for Ralph. They eventually crash land in the desert where they find Ralph, who has since come out as transgender and is now Rachel, running a Fatheads ice cream truck. Rocko begs Rachel to come back to O-Town and bring back the Fatheads. After some convincing, she agrees to return for her family's sake. Back at Conglamo, Dupet hates the CGI Fathead special and hires Rachel to take over when Rocko returns with her. However, Ed struggles to accept Rachel's transition and the new changes in his life, resulting in him leaving his job and putting Conglamo and O-Town in jeopardy. Rocko, feeling guilty, tries to fix things, but Ed lashes out, telling Rocko to go back to the 90s where you belong. Rocko feels awful for making things worse, especially between Rachel and Ed. Meanwhile, Bev talks to Ed, trying to get him to move past his transphobia, but Ed admits that his anger is really about everything changing so fast. Rachel reflects on fond memories with her parents, and encouraged by Rocko's support, starts working on a new Fathead special. Rocko finds Ed in the ruins of his house, and they bond over their shared fear of change. The Winds of Change shows up and lectures them about how change is essential for happiness.
Why are you here, Mr. Winds of Change?
I am here to tell you that embracing change is the key to happiness.
Then Rocko gets a call from Heffer and Filbert saying the new Fathead special is ready to premiere at Conglamo. Rocko drags Ed to the premiere. As they watch, they see Rachel has added a new character, a baby Fathead. Everyone loves the new character, except Rocko, but it doesn't matter. The special is a huge hit and makes billions of dollars, saving the town. Ed, seeing his family's influence in the special, finally reconciles with Rachel. Rocko disapproves of the new special. He says it's too different from the original Fatheads, and he can't take his favorite show changing. But in a shocking turn of events, it's Ed who convinces him that change is a part of life, and it should be embraced. Rocko finally accepts this. Suddenly, the rocket that launched Rocko's house crashes into the Conglamo building, sending it and Dupet into space. The money earned from the special rains down on the crowd, saving O-Town. Rachel and her parents leave for a new life together in the ice cream van, and Filbert reunites with his wife and family. As the news signs off, we see a glimpse of Mr. Dupet floating through space. He's throwing boogers on the wall and is counting them. Something tells me he's going to be doing that for a long time. And that was our recap of Rocko's Modern Life. Did we catch all your favorite episodes? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to drop a like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. See ya!